what I'm fussy about. But I guess before that, we ought to probably do a backpack show. What do you think?
You think? I mean, I think it's a good idea. Renee's joined us.
Renée Yoxon, who is going to talk to us about voices.
So my favorite guests are the ones recommended by previous guests who were amazing, which is the case here. The founder of Origami Customs, Ray, emailed to say, "Oh, I have someone that maybe you should talk to." And I was like, "Yes." Wait, who?
So we interviewed Ray. Yes. We interviewed Ray's partner. Now we're on to friends. We're going to come up with some other people.
Pretty sure their parents, college roommates.
I'm going to do the other intro today just because we haven't done it in a little tiny bit without Tim.
Okay.
I want Tim.
Hi, everyone. Tim Kitzrow from NBA Jam and NFL Blitz, welcoming you to The Backpack Show. Your hosts, Chris Brogan, Kerry Gorgone, Boom Shakalaka.
Backpack Show.
Woo! So did you want to talk about Renée Yoxon, or you want to just bring them out?
There's my biological father and his wife.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Michael. Hi, Chloe.
Chloe sent me cake.
I think we should just drag them out here and
Chloe sent me 2 cakes.
Chloe sent you 2 cakes?
I think by accident. Shipping error. Yes. So it was my birthday. And Chloe sent cake, which was amazing. And then something happened and the company sent to a wrong address or something. I ended up getting it anyway. So I ended up with 2 cakes.
Well, that is excitable. Also, thanks to everyone who tuned in for the live Freeze Our Body Parts Off version of the show for Kerry's birthday. That was nearly fun.
Nearly.
Okay. I'm going to just grab our new pal, Renée, and get on to the storyline here. Hey, Renée, welcome to this. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Gender affirming voice. What does this mean, gender affirming voice teacher? I've watched your videos, so I know, but no one else here does.
And how do you become a gender affirming voice teacher?
Oh my gosh, those are 2 giant questions. So basically, I call my work gender affirming voice, but like trans people call this work lots of different things. Some people call it trans voice work. Some people call it voice feminization or masculinization. And basically, it's the process of modifying your speaking voice to create something that you love. And that might be to align with your gender presentation or to specifically not align with your gender presentation, depending on your goals. And how did I become that? I was a singing teacher for all of my life, 12 years. And I started teaching singing to trans people specifically, just because I am trans and I like to hang with my people, basically. So what I found was through teaching singing to the trans community that there was this big hole in service provision, especially for people who speak French and other languages other than English. So I started teaching that in Montreal, and now it's what I do full time.
That's amazing. Oh, and Chloe says I can't take credit for the second cake. happy accident.
Are you a Capricorn, Kerry?
I am, as it happens.
Me too.
Barely. Oh, but barely, minutes away from not. So I don't know if that affects my attitude in a way that is displeasing to you. So I apologize. So I have this particular issue really strikes a chord with me because I am a mom of a transgender child, and their voice had changed quite a bit before they came out. I think before they even realized what was kind of going on with them. And so what options are there for someone who has, a very deep voice, but otherwise presents very feminine, and that's how they want to present?
Yeah, so what you're referring to is a voice affected by testosterone. I usually call it that way because you could have a voice affected by testosterone no matter what your assigned birth gender is. You could take testosterone later in life. So what the options are typically, most people will start with training, so which is what I do. But you can get training through speech language pathologists and through YouTube videos and then through voice coaches like myself. And then people will usually do that for a couple of years. And if they're not satisfied, then the next phase would be surgery, which I don't have any expertise in.
What? You don't do that in your music studio?
No.
As a side project?
No.
I remember once hearing a radio gag where they were calling people and saying, hey, we want to have you on Oprah. She's going to, perform some surgeries, just to show that she could do it. There'll be a doctor there, but she's going to do it. And he would be amazed how many people were like, okay.
I mean, Oprah can do no wrong, right? Apparently.
All right, let me get back to that though, because that's fascinating too. So first off, what you said, voice affected by testosterone. I think that's it. I really like that language because, like you said, it has nothing. we all know a person who is, a cishet woman, let's say, who you always get sir on the phone. Like that's a thing we've heard aunts and uncles say for millions of years or whatever. But more interestingly, one of the things you said is that there's, you can kind of figure it out. You can sort of watch some YouTube, then you can get some coaching. I watched some of your videos, and for instance, it was really interesting to me because there's so much effort involved in kind of what you have to say and train to get people to do stuff. You were giving these practices, sort of like kind of things and whatever, and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't think I could remember all that stuff. How long or how often or what do we have to do to train ourselves into a better voice is the question in that blather.
Yeah, good question. I mean, everyone has a different learning style, which is kind of why I provide these like free resources. I know for some people that just having access to the videos is going to be like sufficient for them to work on their voice, but some people need a little bit more direction. So if your question is like, what do we need to do? Every person is going to have a different requirement, right? Because every person has different goals. And something I think about a lot as a trans voice teacher is that I am not the gender police. Like, it's not my job to say like, yes, you're sufficiently woman or sufficiently man. Like whenever I approach a new student, I approach with curiosity and I want to find out what their goals are, what they've already tried. And so what will take you from where you are now to your goal, that's completely personal. It really depends on where you're starting and where you want to go.
So we have one comment. I might paraphrase a little bit, but basically they say it takes 10,000 hours to master painting or an instrument. Maybe it takes 10,000 hours to master a new gender. I don't like the phrasing, but what I do think is that it's possible to, like, if you're voice training for any reason, right, it is like an instrument, right?
Sure.
And it's an interesting question overall, Renee, because I think there is a question of that. Like, are there performative elements that have to come into what people are sure is their actual gender, whatever that may be?
Well, so I
amp up the feminine sometimes.
I mean, who's not performing gender at any given moment? I try and stay away from the language of like the gender of a voice, because I believe that like if you're a woman, you have a woman's voice. But if you want a different voice for whatever reason, I can help you to figure that out. But like the voices that we have, I usually call it the habituated voice. It's not like your real voice. It's just the voice that you acquired through listening to your parents and through listening to voices in your environment. And so it's not like inauthentic to change your voice. Just like it wouldn't be inauthentic if you got a new haircut. Like it's like, oh, you had a biological haircut, now you have a fake haircut. Like, no, hair is it's just hair. And I am trying to push for the voice to be seen in a similar way. It's just a social choice. It's learned behavior. If you are brought up to believe that you are a girl, then you're going to be imitating mom because you think she's a girl, and vice versa. And so, when we're working towards modifying the voice, it's like, what brings you gender euphoria? What brings you joy? It's not about like mastering womanhood, right? That's just not, I don't think that's a thing personally.
I haven't achieved it. So Dean says, my bride is an elementary school counselor and this issue is real. It's interesting to me to see people sometimes say that there's suddenly so many transgender youth, so many transgender young people. And I'm like, that is absolutely untrue.
Just like the epidemic of left-handed people,
Right? Exactly. Like they used to beat you into using your right hand and your writing would be awful. And there just wasn't, for one thing, some of them don't have words to express. Like in our case, there just wasn't like a role model or a representative or anybody who embodied transgender for my kid to see and be like, wait a second.
Even when I came out, non-binary wasn't a thing. Like we used genderqueer. Like I'm 36. So when I was 17, like the word was genderqueer,
Right. So in the absence of language or role models or anything to help you kind of figure out what you're looking at, that's you kind of take a while to get there, I guess.
Well, yeah, and exactly. It's interesting where Renee took it too, because what I understood you to say was that I'm not aiming at female voice or anything like that. I'm aiming at, did you want a higher voice or whatever? I saw another one of your videos that was like that. It was something about, I don't remember the phrase. It was something like, did you want a more like, I'm going to use the wrong word, so fix me. It was like sensual or something. Like, did you want a little more breathy voice or something? And as you were saying the other stuff, just to top this on top of it, I was thinking of my least favorite voice thing. That's a lot of people's least favorite. Vocal fry.
Ooh. I knew you were going to say it. I nailed that one. I knew it.
I freaking hate that it works though. Like I hate that it's statistically like people are more persuaded by voices with vocal fry. And I'm like, the heck with everybody.
Mhm.
I give up.
Weigh in on this for us, Renee.
Well, I think that we tend to vilify qualities that are associated with femininity. Vocal fry tends to be associated with femininity, and so surprise, surprise, everybody hates it. But vocal fry has lots of uses beyond the like Californian English that we hear women in that part of the world using. Some trans masculine people default to vocal fry because it tends to sound like more deep. But there's just so many different qualities that you can use and a variety of ways. That's why it's so fun to be a voice teacher.
I have
Wow.
a business related question about this. So you were a music teacher before, kind of a glut on the market, depending where you are for music teachers, right? Can be. So how do you find and capitalize on your niche or your expertise?
Yeah, well, trans people are a chronically underserved community. So it was really not that challenging. I didn't really have to niche down at all. I mean, I guess I have a niche, but it's what I do is so well like documented and understood in specifically the trans feminine community. Like I don't really have a niche. It like what I do is I would say like equal to being a singing teacher. Like it's that broad. There's that many people who need that information. So all I had to do was like go on TikTok and be like, hello, I do this thing. And then suddenly I was viral, you know, because it's just the trans community is so underserved.
Please help me.
Please help me.
Please help me.
When you say trans feminine community, are those people who are trying to represent themselves or seeking the tools they think they need to represent themselves more feminine?
Yeah, so I sometimes say trans feminine, and I'm referring to like people who are women who are trans, but people who are non-binary, but who are like doing a feminizing transition. So they share a lot of experiences with trans women, but they might not see themselves as women.
Interesting. You really turned my head right with that bit, and also explaining sort of how vocal fry works for trans men, because up until you said any of the things you said, especially the fact that you said that, you know, people, we tend to make, you know, say bad things about female traits. I was like, oh, is that what I'm doing there? I just thought I was sort of like you said about the sort of California voice. I think,
yeah, but some traits are annoying. I think we could agree.
I just think we always need to like question where we get our likes and dislikes.
Yeah, it's a good
you know,
question.
that's all I'm trying to say.
But I didn't like it before I knew it was vocal fry.
All right, let's move off that because I could probably still go 20 more minutes on that. What are some of the trickier things that you've been brought as cases? Even if, by the way, sometimes I think we, you know, you probably get someone in because they're trans, but you might identify, oh my gosh, this isn't that, this is another thing. What are some of that? Meaning it's not related to their intentions and goals with their voice, but you're catching something that you could probably help them with. I don't know, a lisp or something. What's some other vocal element that's not like, help me be more feminine?
Sure. So I try and keep what I do like very narrow. So I help people modify their voice in like a gender way most of the time. There are like, you know, cisgender people who've approached me, like men who want to sound more masculine and women who want to sound more masculine, and nobody really ever wants to sound more feminine, cis people. But I do not help people with things like speech impediments, like lisps or anything else like that. That's like outside of my wheelhouse. And I always will refer people to a speech language pathologist or an otolaryngologist or an ear, nose, and throat specialist if someone has like a pathology, because I am not a doctor.
So what about promotion? I think it sounded like you just put yourself out there, explained what you do, and boom, people. Were there any other parts to this? Not to be like unsexy, but we have a lot of marketers and small business owners. So like SEO, was that part of the mix? Do you go to local events? Like what do you do to promote yourself?
Sure. So like when I first started, I got on TikTok because I had made the decision to pivot from teaching singing to teaching trans voice alteration. And I thought, okay, well, if I'm going to do this full time, like the young trans people are on TikTok, so I better just get on there, even though I'm in my 30s. And that was at a time when TikTok was like warming new creators. So you were getting like there were these big viral moments that were happening. And so right away, my account had like 10,000 followers, like in a weekend. It was really shocking. And so I had to then like figure out a way to capture those people. So I took my website completely down and just put up a little email capture and was like, something is coming. I don't know what. And I didn't even give people like a lead generator, and yet somehow they all signed up for my mailing list. And so I was able to like launch the first course in September of 2021. And it did really well. And that success allowed me to like keep focusing on the business. And so in the years since, I have like created an SEO strategy where I like create these TikTok videos that I then cross post on Instagram and LinkedIn and YouTube. And they end up on my blog, and I turn them into longer form blog posts. And I do keyword search optimization and things like that. So that's like the broader strategy. But it has the double effect of also like creating a lot of free resources for people. So everybody wins, really.
That's okay. We'll let you stay. The former guest coming back. So what about like, do you, since you're online and you sell courses and things, do you still have like a presence or network in your local community, or is it a pretty online service?
Yeah, when I first started, I was doing live workshops for trans organizations in Montreal. So there was like Project 10. And then pretty much right away after I started, the pandemic happened. But a lot of trans organizations got funding for online programming. And that was kind of what pushed me to make this course, because I had given this one workshop like 20 times in the local community in and around Montreal and in Toronto. But since I've moved to like selling courses, I have focused completely to online. And that means like sometimes I teach privately to people all over the world, but for the most part, I'm not teaching privately. I'm just focusing on the creation and the selling of these courses. And now I'm in Mexico City.
Ooh, cool.
Before we dig into Mexico City, I noticed on your courses, by the way, you also had sort of a train the trainer one. And one of the things I liked about that course was that it also said basically some of the your 101 training on how to help people understand the language. What do people like myself get wrong when they're speaking about the things that you're most passionate about? And if you had a captive audience of a handful of people right now, who you do, who aren't used to talking about trans issues, trans people, anything like that, what are some of the basics that you wish more people would use or say or do or think, besides your first thing that you said, which was to be curious, which I thought was a great piece of advice?
Yeah, I would say when people tell you that they are a gender, they are that gender from the moment they tell you. Even if they don't appear to you like the gender they're telling you. Like, this is something that my brain has like changed because of my students that I've taught. Like, I have had now like hundreds of people approach me, like, and they say, I'm a woman, and I am seeing like a boy mode version of that woman. And at first that was challenging. I guess my brain would like put that person in the like man category. And it like, if you cannot do that if you just practice. And now when someone says I'm a woman, I'm like, okay, great. Like, and it's actually not at all challenging to use the correct pronouns and to think of her as a woman, and no matter what she looks like, you know? And so that like allows you to move into the world with way more curiosity about the people around you. Like, you stop doing things like assuming, like, it goes well beyond gender. You just stop assuming things based on what people look like in the world. And it's a beautiful quality.
Except for who's rich. You can always tell that.
You can always tell.
That's a really good piece of advice. Kerry and I's children hang out together, and there's a whole bunch of them who all play role-playing games on Wednesday night. It's 13 or so people, 12 of which are trans. They have one token straight kid who wandered in and said, am I okay being here? Like, is this all right? And they were like, yep, if you like gaming, you're in the right place. But one of them, for instance, her name, they go by Kenneth, which I think is their birth name, but they're a girl and they present as a girl and they wear girl things and they're Kenneth. And I was like, you never wanted to just change that up and be like, I don't know, Melissa? And they were like, nope. And that was it. And
listen, changing your name is a pain.
Huge pain. And it can sometimes cost money.
Although it's easier than changing your Twitter handle.
Well, this is the other thing, actually, just to tack on to what your question was before. Yeah. Like, people don't realize that transition is like both labor intensive and resource intensive, and not everybody has access to those resources. And that doesn't make them like less trans or like less of the gender they're telling you, just because they don't have the money for the surgeries they want or the haircut they want or whatever.
Right. We talked about that with Ray. We were like, it's a privilege to be able to express how you want to express.
Like I had top surgery and it was 100% covered by the province of Quebec. And I know that's like a major privilege. And if I wasn't living in Quebec, I probably would never have gotten it.
So I have a question about putting out there that you serve this community and that you're part of it. Because, as a mother, obviously, I was like, oh, this is scary for me because you're going to go out in the world and be a target from some people. So is that part of your experience, or has it on the whole been positive for you?
I mean, I think that people don't see me and think, like cis people don't see me and think trans or queer. All the trans and queer people are like, that's a clockable trans person. But so I realized that there's like, it's a double-edged sword. It's like, it's a privilege to not be a target. I move through the world. People typically see me as like a tall woman. But it is also sometimes challenging to not be seen as the gender that I am. But I'm very lucky. Like I think in terms of family and friendship support and my employment, like I have all the boxes ticked on like what you need to have a good, happy life. So, and I think it's possible for most people, like as you know, that we have to just keep doing things like this, like interviews where we talk about how normal it is to be trans. Like I cannot tell you how normal I am, like just so boldly average. And so many trans people are just normal. Like it's just
what's your beige trait,
like,
Renee?
My beige trait is that I have journaled every day for like 12 years, like just in the morning, like my little feelings, like, it's so boring.
That's his beige trait too.
I love journaling. Renee, it's like, it's sitting here right on my desk. So
I have one too. I'm not as consistent, but I do have one.
I think mine is down here. See, journal 2022,
nice.
or 2023, 2024.
Hey.
Wow.
Do you keep them? Do you go back to them?
I have a shelf like this. It's actually wild. Whoa. Yeah. Whenever I'm like, I shouldn't have broken up with that ex, I go back and I read and I'm like, oh.
Thought you were saving them up for like the memoir that will.
Yeah, maybe one day the Smithsonian will want to know about my first yeast infection, but I really don't think so.
I mean, probably not the second or third. So that's old hat.
But they're just like, look, have you even heard of cranberries? So no. You mentioned about being in Mexico City. That's another sort of privilege thing, right? So Kerry and her kid went on some vacation. I think it was, well, you went to Amsterdam, but I think it was London you went to.
Grumpy about vacations. Like, damn, people not here to work.
Yeah, I hate when people take vacation. You went up to like UK somewhere and there was like a pretty decent LGBTQ community. And we were talking about, it's interesting to know which countries it's going to be fine. We obviously know there's a massive swath of the middle of the planet that maybe not so much. What's the feel down there? What's Mexico's trans environment?
Well, I can't speak to all of Mexico, but Mexico City is a very special place because all the queer people from all over the country basically come here. So there's just like amazing events and bookstores and bars that are like Montreal doesn't have that, like spaces dedicated to queerness. They have we have events and we have some spaces, but they're really going through like a queer renaissance here right now. And it's really special. How
do we spark the queer renaissance in Montreal?
I mean, Montreal is just like over being gay. It's like, we don't need any dedicated anymore.
Go back to Succession. That's more fun.
My kid and I moved away from Tennessee because there's nothing safe in the whole state. Getting less safe by the day.
Sorry to hear that, Kerry.
We were not planning it. Thanks. But it's helpful, I think, to have some spaces dedicated, even in a place that you feel like is largely accepting, because some people are a little scared making those first forays out into society, totally being themselves. There's still some armor, I find, in people that are just discovering it. Like there's a lot of, I don't know what to call it, but like they're still hiding a little bit. They're vulnerable, but they need to be encouraged to express themselves.
To that point, what amount? Well, okay. So I asked you a question about do you ever have something that's not exactly a trans issue come up in vocal, and you're like, nope. What about what? Is there any overread on therapy that comes out in these sessions where you're supposed to be doing voice, but you're clearly hearing some stuff and you think you can help? How does that work out?
Well, so I am pretty clear with my boundaries when it comes to private lessons. Like I tell people right away that I'm not a therapist, but I think singing teachers would all tell you that like a good 30% of singing lessons are therapy. Like outside of the trans thing, when we're working with the voice, it's extremely vulnerable. It comes from inside of you. And, it's very personal. And then on the trans side of things, like a lot of trans people don't even have one person that they can talk to about their transition. So I would have like people come into their lessons and telling me, really vulnerable things. And this is one of the reasons why I actually stopped doing private voice lessons, just because it became like clear that I was going to burn out. I was not going to be able to keep serving the community. And so I found a way to like have long-term success in this industry in a way that like is sustainable for me. So now I can make my TikToks and make my courses, and I host an office hour for members of my courses. So like I think I have like, I don't know, like between 500 and 1,000 people like in all of the courses. And I would say like 15 people come to the live, and I sometimes get a few extra like questions. And the lives are a great place for people to like ask questions to each other and support each other in a way that I'm not like the one pillar of support. And there's a Discord server where people can find each other as well that is associated with my courses.
So you have a lot in between you're making your courses. You're keeping up with a lot of channels.
I'm trying.
Bo says, Tennessee resident trans creepypasta narrator.
Hi, Bo.
Hanging out in the chat.
You might have a new subscriber by the end of this, Bo.
So Project Rebuild just started watching the newest Quantum Leap. They covered the trans topic very well for me. So that brings up an issue about the representation of transgender people in like popular culture generally. Mm-hmm. Making progress? Is it worse? Is it like, should they try or not? Or is it better to just get trans actors hired for whatever role they want and stop talking about it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're at the place yet where we can just forget about it. Like we definitely need like stories about trans people, as long as they're by trans people. Like I don't really want to see trans stories written by cis people, because we can always tell, to flip that meme, we can always tell when trans stories are not being told by the people that they are about. But I do think that the like end goal should be to just have characters in stories, movies, TV, whatever, that are trans, but not just trans, like who are also disabled and of color and indigenous, and a wide variety of types of people being represented. Because who we see like in TV and in media, that's who we give like value to. And if you are not like the things you see on television, it's like, do I have value? And that can be really distressing.
You just made me think of both Laverne Cox saying, I would love to see a script where it's not that I'm trans, and Asia Kate Dillon, who was in Billions and then got on to John Wick 3 Parabellum, saying it would be super cool if it wasn't about my non-binary status, and got that in Billions. In Billions, it was just an accepted. EJ's in the audience, EJ Cartwright, who works on with Cialdini. Speaking of not judging people, Kerry, are you pushing that, or am I?
You want me to push it? I'm afraid it's going to make Renee disappear entirely.
For a minute. Speaking of not judging people based on looks, my brother is trans, but he fluctuates.
Sure.
Sometimes he's more masked, he grows a mustache, but then a few months later, he'll dress as a woman. I'm cool with it, but it's hard for others who see it as fake because he goes back and forth. They need to know it's a spectrum and it isn't black and white. My oldest kid is exactly this, by the way, EJ. My oldest kid, we just had this talk yesterday before I get Renee's take. My oldest kid is non-binary, assigned female at birth, has gone through a lot of testosterone, has plenty of beard hair when they choose it. I said, I feel like some days you wish that a beard was like an accessory, like a Lego, like you could just pull it off. And they were like, yerp. And I was like, that's the answer, isn't it, Renee?
I don't understand why people can't just mind their business. Like how does it affect you in any way, how someone dresses or carries their beard hair? My personal opinion is that trans people are making it acceptable to like be yourself, and they're doing a public service for everyone, including cis people. And if you can't see that as a cis person, you just want to keep creating your own cage and living in it, like go off, queen, or whatever. But it's not for me. Like, just how does it even remotely affect you how someone dresses?
Go off, Regent.
I get mad about it. Sorry.
Listen, we're from Boston. I'm like, why people can't just ignore other people? I don't know. I have opinions about everybody all the time. Like, you're dumb and you're amazing, or you're whatever. I keep them to myself because otherwise it would be odd. And why
It's
can't they
free
just
to not
Hey.
talk.
Sue joined us. You push it. I'm not touching it. Sue said,
Hi,
represent.
Susan.
You have to pick a person of the day, my friend.
Yeah, I got to
I
do
don't
a
know how
couple
you're
of
going
things.
to
You know
do
what,
it.
you know what else I forgot to do? Where is it? Oh, boop. We're sponsored by StreamYard. You can make your own damn show if you want. You can just go to cbrogan.net/StreamYard and get your own duck.
Get your own music teacher.
Whatever. All right. Person of the day. I bet that's somewhere here.
Oh, and here's our person of the day. Kaboom!
Oh my gosh. All right. So who are we gonna pick? Carrie, who do you want to pick? You pick.
We never get our
I know
druthers
it's
on this
not a
type of
it's not a
thing.
democracy. This show. What do you got?
So I have to say, as far as like bringing the most difficult issue to discuss to the table, it'd be Mike Wazowski.
Yeah. Thanks, EJ. I agree. I think that's a fun one. My dad points out though, because my little brother shaved half his head right down the middle,
Oh.
super long hair, shaved it right down the middle.
Wait, how
I
do
got
you
to
shave
tell him
that like a bald
this
track?
way, like the right side is gone.
Oh, okay.
Very big with the Voivod crowd for a while. Renee would know. That's a Canadian band.
No
Big monster.
judgment.
Anyway, that's how. So that's our person of the day, eh? We're gonna go with EJ. Great. That entitles you to one free apple. All you need is to go to the store and steal it. Don't let them catch you.
Well, you could purchase it legally.
If you want, but then
Your
it's not
thing.
free.
That's true.
So we ask every single guest who's ever been here, even if they don't know why they got dragged into this shenanigans. One question, which is what goes in your backpack. This could be something physical. It could be something metaphorical. Carrie, what's an example of something physical you could throw in a backpack?
Ooh, extra set of teeth. DJ Cumberbund from YouTube said extra set of teeth.
That's a good
You
one.
never know.
Is there something metaphorical you could add?
Kindness. Ariel Helvetica, burlesque performer, put kindness in the backpack.
Do you want to confess to Renee why you have to say that every single episode that we talk about it?
All right, fine. Because when Ariel said it, I laughed in her face. But it was not because of what she said. It was because just before that, Nikki Porche of Buy From a Black Woman had said, Black women, I'd put Black women in my backpack. And I was like, what? And then she realized what she said. And then we were laughing, me and her. And then we were like, oh my God. And you were just like, listen, if I put a bunch of Black women in my backpack, I'd get in trouble. We're like, oh my God. And everything fell apart. And then it was time. I was like, oh, Ariel, what would you put in the backpack? And I was just like, wasn't ready. Wasn't ready.
And she said kindness, and then Carrie and Nikki laughed at her.
Well, not at her. We weren't done. We weren't done. So anyway,
Renee,
now I say
you've been
kindness.
a wonderful guest, Renee. What would you add to the backpack?
I would add like ignorant confidence. Like you don't need to know what's ahead of you. Just plow forward. Like I got my first degree was in physics. And if I had known what I was getting myself into when I got my physics degree, I don't think I would have started. And that's true of every project I've done. I just go boldly confident, not knowing all the steps I'm about to take.
So like a toddler, like toddler confidence.
Very much like a toddler.
What is it? May I face the day with the confidence of a 6-year-old in a Batman shirt?
Absolutely.
Well, Feynman Jr., glad to have you on the show. Thank you so much for being part of this. We know how to find you, so we're not going to ask that. But Kerry, did you ever in the early days of your life contemplate voice lessons or anything like that? I mean, you have a singing voice and all that. Did you ever think that maybe you should do something about singing? Or
I just sang all the time. I would walk down the street singing. People would be like, oh, here comes that kid again. And I took one voice lesson and that was it because